The porch light had been flickering for 3 weeks. Nora kept meaning to replace the bulb, kept adding it to the mental list of things she now handled alone. The gutters, the water heater, the slow leak under the kitchen sink that she'd temporarily solved with a plastic bin and quiet resignation. That was the thing nobody warned you about after a divorce. It wasn't the loneliness at 2 in the morning that broke you. It was the flickering porch light. She was in the middle of folding laundry when the knock came. It was just past 8 on a Thursday evening, the kind of ordinary Thursday that had no business becoming anything significant. Her daughter Becca was at her grandmother's for the weekend. The house was quiet in that specific way it got when it was just Nora. Dinner for one. Television she only half-watched, the hum of the refrigerator filling the spaces where noise used to live. She set down one of Becca's sweaters and moved toward the front door, expecting a neighbor, maybe the teenage boy from across the street who occasionally rang the wrong bell, looking for the Hendersons. She opened the door. The porch light flickered once, then steadied. Callum was standing on her front step with a bouquet of white peonies, her favorite, the ones she'd never once mentioned to him during their marriage because he'd never once asked, and he looked like a man who had driven through the night and arrived somewhere he wasn't sure he deserved to be. His eyes were red. His jaw was working. His hair was slightly longer than she remembered, curling at the ends, the way it always did when he'd gone many weeks without a haircut. He was wearing the gray jacket she used to call his good jacket, the one he saved for things that mattered. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Nora stood in the doorway in her socked feet and her old college sweatshirt, laundry still warm in her hands from the dryer, and she watched her ex-husband try to find words and come up completely empty. His face was doing something she hadn't seen it do in years, maybe ever. It was crumbling in real time, slowly and without any attempt to stop it. His eyes filled. He pressed his lips together. He looked down at the flowers and then back up at her as if they were supposed to do the talking for him. "Callum," she said. He shook his head. Not in refusal, in helplessness. She stepped back and let him in. They had been married for 9 years, divorced for 2. The dissolution had been quiet in the way that long, slow things tend to be. Not a single dramatic implosion, but a series of small withdrawals, emotional absences, months of parallel living that eventually became so parallel they simply stopped intersecting. There had been no affair, no catastrophic fight, no villain in the story. Just 2 people who had stopped choosing each other, and one of them, her, who had finally said out loud what they'd both known for a long time. Callum hadn't argued. That had hurt more than if he had. He'd moved to Portland after the divorce. She'd stayed in Millbrook, in the house they'd bought together when Becca was 2. They'd managed a functional co-parenting arrangement, the kind that was civil and careful and slightly exhausting, custody exchanges in parking lots, school events where they stood on opposite sides of the gymnasium, text threads that were efficient and almost impersonal. She hadn't seen him in 4 months. She hadn't expected to see him tonight. She poured water into a vase for the peonies without asking why he'd brought them. He sat at the kitchen island, the same island where he used to drink his morning coffee, and when she turned around he was finally, barely, holding himself together. "I drove down," he said unnecessarily. "I can see that." She set the vase down and leaned against the counter, arms crossed loosely, not defensively, just carefully. 6 hours. 6.5. There was construction outside Eugene. He looked at the flowers in the vase. "I stopped at that flower place in Roseburg. I don't know why I stopped. I just pulled over." He paused. "I don't even know if you still like peonies." "I do." He nodded like that meant something. "Talk to me," she said. He was quiet for a long moment. Outside, the neighbor's dog barked twice and then went still. The refrigerator hummed. "I've been seeing someone," he said, "for about a year. Her name is Diane. She's a landscape architect. She's a good person, Nora. Genuinely." Nora didn't move. "Okay." She asked me to marry her. 3 weeks ago. He looked up. I said I needed time to think. The kitchen felt very still. "And?" Nora said. And I couldn't answer her. He pressed both hands flat on the counter. Not because I don't care about her, I do. But every time I tried to say yes, something in me just stopped, locked up completely. And I didn't understand why. And I've spent 3 weeks trying to understand why, and then 2 days ago, I was sitting in my apartment at like midnight, and I finally admitted to myself what the problem was. He looked at her. I never apologized to you. The words landed quietly. She felt them settle somewhere behind her sternum. Not really, he continued. I said the right things during the divorce. I said I was sorry it didn't work. I said all the language that you say. But I never actually looked at you and told you what I did, what I failed to do. He exhaled. I was absent for years, Nora. Not physically. I was in the house. I was at the dinner table. I was technically present for all of it. But I was somewhere else. I let you carry everything. Becca, the house, the finances, the emotional weight of the whole marriage. I just let you carry it, and I told myself you were strong enough so it was fine. Like your strength was permission for my absence. Nora said nothing. Not because there was nothing to say. Because she was listening in a way she hadn't in a very long time. You asked me once, he said. You asked me if I was happy, and I said I didn't know. He shook his head. Do you remember that? On the back porch. Becca was maybe 4. You asked me if I was happy, and I said I didn't know, and then I went back inside. You sat out there for another hour by yourself. I remember, she said. That was the moment. That was when I should have said something real. Done something real. And I just went back inside. His voice wavered. I went back inside, Nora. And then he was crying. Not dramatically. Quietly, the way men cry when they've been holding something for too long, his head slightly bowed, his shoulders pulled in, tears moving down his face without any attempt to stop them. He'd shown up on her doorstep unable to speak, and now she understood why. He had been carrying these words for 2 years, maybe longer, and they had grown. So heavy they'd filled his chest all the way to his throat and left no room for anything else. She walked around the island and put her hand on his shoulder. She didn't say it was okay because it wasn't exactly okay. She didn't tell him not to cry. She just stood there, with her hand on his shoulder the way you stand with someone who needs to be stood with, and she let him finish. When he did, he wiped his face with the back of his hand and exhaled a long, ragged breath. I'm not here to ask for anything, he said. I need you to know that. I'm not here because I want to. I'm not trying to complicate your life or ask you to. He stopped. I just needed you to know that I know. That I see it now and I'm sorry, truly. Not the divorce paperwork kinda sorry. The kind that means I've thought about every specific moment and I understand what I cost you. Nora looked at him for a long moment. Callum. Yeah. I know you know. I think I've known for a while that you knew. She pulled out the stool next to him and sat down. I was angrier at you than I ever let on. I want you to know that too. Not the kind of anger that wanted to hurt you, just the kind that needed to be acknowledged somewhere. I know. But I'm not angry anymore. She meant it. I haven't been for a long time. He looked at her like someone who had arrived expecting weather and found sun instead. You should tell Diane yes, she said. If you love her, and she's good to you, and she's a good person like you said, you should say yes. She paused. But not until you actually believe you deserve to. That's the part you've been missing. The apology wasn't really for me, Callum. I mean, it was, I needed to hear it. But the reason you couldn't say yes to her was because you hadn't forgiven yourself. And you can't let someone love you all the way if you're secretly convinced you don't deserve it. He was very quiet. Is that what you think? It's what I know, she said. I spent a year after the divorce in exactly the same place, wondering if I had been enough, if I had tried the right things, if there was some version of me that could have made it work. And eventually I just had to forgive myself for being human and let it go. He nodded slowly, turning that over. They sat in her kitchen for another hour after that, not reconstructing anything, not negotiating a new version of their history, just talking the way they should have talked 10 years ago. Easy and honest and without the particular performance of two people trying to seem fine. When he finally stood to leave, he looked better. Not fixed, but lighter, like something he'd been carrying in his chest had been set down on her kitchen counter and he was allowed to walk out without it. She walked him to the door. The porch light held steady. "Thank you for coming," she said, and she meant it. He looked at the flickering light above the door. Still now, finally. "You need a new bulb for this." "I know, it's on the list." He nodded. He took one step off the porch, then turned back. "For what it's worth," he said, "you were always enough." More than enough. That was never the problem. She let herself feel that, all of it. "Drive safe," she said. She watched his taillights disappear at the end of the street, then went back inside to finish folding laundry. And for the first time in a long time, the quiet felt like hers. A photorealistic 8K cinematic shot of the same slim attractive Caucasian woman with beautiful eyes, in her college sweatshirt and socked feet, walking through a hallway toward a closed front door. Shot from behind at mid-distance, warm interior lighting, laundry basket on the couch in background. Quiet domestic tension. 16:9 landscape, no head cropping.